बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड वेलकम टू बी माय गेस्ट विद अहमद गुरेजा। क्या हाल चाल है आप सब लोगों के? जी हाँ, सीज़न 6 एंड फर्स्ट एपिसोड, जैसे आपको बताया था लास्ट सीज़न में, वी विल हैव अ न्यू सीज़न कमिंग एंड बहुत ज़्यादा गेस्ट आएंगे। स्पेशली इस सीज़न में आपकी मुलाकात कराएंगे उन गेस्ट के साथ जो कि कनाडा के अंदर ख़ास तौर पे मैं कहता हूँ कि ह्यूमन राइट्स को लेके और वुमेन एम्पावरमेंट्स को लेके जाने जाते हैं। तो जी हाँ, वैसे ही कुछ गेस्ट आज भी हमारे सेट पे हैं एंड आई एम प्रिविलेज टू हैव हर ऑन माय सेट। वेरी वेल नोन कैनेडियन पॉलिटिशियन, आप उनको देखते हैं, जानते हैं, मुख्तलिफ इवेंट्स के ऊपर आपने उनको देखा है कनाडा के अंदर। शी इज़ सर्विंग फॉर मेनी ईयर्स। आज उनके बारे में कुछ जानेंगे, उनसे कुछ गपशप लगाएंगे। जी हाँ, मैं बात कर रहा हूँ सलमा अताउल्लाहजान, सेनेटर फ्रॉम कैनेडियन पार्लियामेंट। अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड वेलकम टू बी माय गेस्ट।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम एंड थैंक यू फॉर आस्किंग मी टू बी अ पार्ट ऑफ दिस शो।
क्या हाल है आपके? खैरियत से?
खैरियत से।
यू आर लुकिंग वेरी वाइब्रेंट टुडे, माशाल्लाह।
Just to reflect on the जो बाहर मौसम है ठंडा and grey, I thought let's wear some color.
बिल्कुल। अच्छा, तो माशाल्लाह सलमा मैन, यू आर फ्रॉम ओरिजिनली फ्रॉम पाकिस्तान, फ्रॉम पख्तून कम्युनिटी, राइट? और इन द लास्ट मेनी ईयर्स, मे बी यू आर द ओनली वन, आई थिंक सो, बट आई हैव नॉट सीन एनी वन फ्रॉम द पाकिस्तानी फ्रॉम द कैनेडियन पॉलिटिक्स जिसका रीजन पाकिस्तानी हो और ख़ास तौर पे फ्रॉम पख्तून कम्युनिटी। इज देयर एनी?
I don't think so. मेरा ख्याल नहीं है कि कोई है। ओरिजिनली मर्दान से हूँ एंड मगर पेशावर में रहते थे। सो मुझे नॉट ओनली इन कैनेडा बट आई डोंट थिंक इवन आउटसाइड ऑफ कैनेडा, इन यूरोप, एनीवेयर ऑल्सो।
अच्छा, तो माशाल्लाह इट्स अ प्रिविलेज फॉर द कम्युनिटी, स्पेशली द पख्तून कम्युनिटी जो कि यहाँ पे है, कि वी हैव यू एज अ सेनेटर। तो थोड़ा सा पीछे चलते हैं एंड आई वुड लाइक टू नो अबाउट यू अ लिटिल। व्हेन डिड यू माइग्रेट to Canada? So that's the first question. But before knowing that, politics is something that you always wanted to do, or is it something by chance?
I think politics is in my blood.
Acha.
You know, I come from a political family. My father was a Pakistani senator, Muslim League Noon के senior vice president रह चुके हैं, secretary general. And my father's uncle was Khan Abdul Wali Khan. So I think the first politicians we saw was Nika Baba, who we say Bacha Khan, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. And I remember as a child, he stayed with us for a long time in Peshawar. And when people would come to see him, I remember people like all the old politicians. And we would be told, ke, behave yourself, tamiz se rehna. And we'd get very upset, ke, who are these people who are coming? Bashani is coming, so-and-so is coming. We didn't realize that there were such great personalities जो आ रहे हैं। And हमेशा हमारे ख़ानदान में सियासत की बात होती थी। So I think that impacts you growing up. That's what we heard. Those are the conversations that we listened to at the dinner table.
Normally होता है ना कि family में not everyone is going toward politics, right? But there is one member in the family who choose to go and follow that bloodline. So कितने बहन भाई थे आप लोग?
हम 5 बहन भाई।
5 बहन भाई हैं, माशाल्लाह।
Four of us are alive, and we always thought my younger brother, who was brilliant, that he would be the one to go into politics. But politics chose me.
That's a nice line. Politics chose you. ठीक है, तो माशाल्लाह। And when did you came to Canada?
In 1980.
1980.
Yes.
तो क्योंकि देखें वो ये mindset है ना कि when you're in Pakistan and you are with the family, when there is an influential politicians in the family, right? So you never thought of being a part of Pakistani politics?
You see, I come from a very traditional home, and I remember I went to the convent, so it was a non-traditional bringing up. The Murray convent, जो boarding school था, so our upbringing was a little bit different. But yet my father was still traditional. When I expressed a desire to become a doctor and work, he said, हमारे घर में तो मर्द काम नहीं करते तो औरतें क्यों काम करेंगी? That was the end. So I didn't think of Pakistani politics as such. It was just so when I came to Canada, and I had that passion about politics, and I wanted to find out. Some of us come here, we just sort of, we are concerned with getting on with life, but I wanted to know. And I was very aware of what was happening, who the parties were, and I would discuss politics, and people would keep telling me, get into politics. मैं हमेशा कहती थी कि कैसे, I've just come. I'm more concerned with putting a roof over my head and just looking after my children. I didn't think of politics as a career, but it was there at the back of my mind, and then somebody suggested, go meet some people, and that's how my journey started. That I met some people in the party who thought that I did have potential, who liked me.
So you contested your first election in Mississauga
In 2008.
2008, and it was Navdeep Bains who actually won, right?
Yes. But so here's the story. I was so new and so naive. Okay, election hone hai, the writ was dropped, and I was still sitting at home, and I'm saying, what do I do? What do I do? I didn't realize that wasn't a target seat. So elections mein ye hota hai ki there's certain seats that they target, that because they know that they have the possibility of winning those seats. Navdeep used to win his seats by huge numbers, huge margins.
Yeah.
And I was asked, okay, that's the seat you'll get, because sare seats mein candidates stay already. And we came in and we started doing so well. आप मानेंगे नहीं कि literally 5 volunteers थे, उनमें से 2 मेरी बेटियां थी, and we did so well कि about 5 weeks into the writ being dropped, the party people came and they walked into my office, and I told them, I said, oh, thank you for coming. I thought I was running as an independent. They said, nee, you're a target riding now. With it then come some facilities, because they had heard, वो अपने polls कराते हैं, they get feedback from people.
Correct.
And we were doing really, really well.
Right.
I didn't win that election, but our numbers, he won by 6,000 votes.
So there's a story, because I was talking to one of the MPP, Khalid Rashid, a long time ago. So if you remember, he won,
Yes.
and when the Kathleen Bean was there, and the whole wind changed the whole election, right? So वो भी Erin Mills के अंदर अपना, I think it's Cooksville, I believe, Cooksville के अंदर. So he said, अभी मेरा सिर्फ नाम दे दिया है ना, so I will see. I mean, because he knew कि Liberal is in power and it's gonna sweep or it's gonna win. And वहाँ से मेरे ख्याल इमरान मियाँ was the other candidate that I remember. Yes. तो Khalid was like, मैंने तो ना कोई बोर्ड लगाया, ना मैंने कुछ सोचा. कहता was few days back, I've started to work, and all of a sudden things change. And कहता you probably have not seen any of my board out there. And then, but he won the election.
Yeah.
ऐसे भी होता है.
Yeah, sweet father. So I was the candidate, and believe me, it took a lot out of me. We had a huge community, Pakistani community, in that riding, which could have made the difference to vote. And I remember some of my volunteers are there, and they were saying, my God, we're calling people, and somebody saying, nee, I have to do groceries, I don't have time to vote. I have to do laundry, I don't have time to vote. And I was a little bit disappointed, because a few people, after I lost the election, came and said, oh my God, if we had known you were that close, we would have gone out and voted. And since then, everywhere I go, I tell people, exercise your right to vote. Don't let it just pass by. So
I'm not
they
sure
asked me to be candidate again, because we did so well.
I'm not sure about the other communities, but I've seen कि Pakistani community में there is a very less drive in going out and putting votes.
Yes.
We talk a lot. We do a lot of social media stuff. We do a lot of X and Twitter and so much stuff. But ये कि the drive is very low. We have to. Me being a volunteer working with a lot of candidates, I have seen कि you have to put a lot of hard work to bring them out.
Yes.
So many commitments that you have to do. So many dinners and lunches that you have to do. In order for them to understand that you have to exercise this voting right. So since बात करें politics की, तो before I will go to your work, I want to know a few more things. You have been part of Conservative Party, right? And हमने देखा है कि over the time, जितने भी हमारे candidates आए हैं, और it's a narrative, maybe it's not me, it's a narrative that immigrants को liberals ने बहुत मौका दिया. And when it comes to an ethnic community and when it comes to Indian Pakistani community, तो हमें देखा है कि इतना कैंडिडेट्स कंजर्वेटिव पार्टी के अंदर गए नहीं है बिकॉज ऑफ द नैरेटिव. जो स्टीफन हार्पर का एक एरा था, उसके अंदर बहुत से लोगों की सोच चेंज हुई, और ये चीज़ फील रही हमेशा इमिग्रेंट को कि इमिग्रेंट्स को इतनी अटेंशन नहीं दी गई उस टाइम के अंदर, और एक कम्युनिटी को एक साइड लाइन रखा गया. थिंग्स लाइक कि सेकेंड ग्रेड सिटीजन्स और स्टफ लाइक दैट, ये तब चीज़ें हम सुनने में आया करती थी. इमिग्रेशन का जो प्रोसेस जो कि एक स्पाउस का होता था, वो जो कि 6 months में हो सकता था और हुआ इस लास्ट गवर्नमेंट के अंदर, जो करंट गवर्नमेंट के अंदर, वो 3-3 साल प्रोसेस हुआ करता था. देयर वर फ्यू रीजंस कि हमेशा जो कम्युनिटी है वो कंजर्वेटिव से थोड़ा दूर रही. लेकिन लास्ट कुछ टाइम हमने चेंजेस देखी हैं जो कुछ 2-3 years के अंदर. But how did you find this party, workable and beneficial to the immigrants?
I'll tell you, I've listened to that same narrative, and that the liberals are for immigrants, but in reality, when you start looking at what they were doing, they weren't treating us any different. It was the conservatives who started the immigration department, but I found the strong family values and tough on crime. जो हमारी policies थी conservative party की, that appealed to me. And talking about the visas, it's the number one issue I deal with. And let's talk about the Pakistani visa issue currently. I don't know if you're aware, but I have stood up in the Senate many times to ask the question. And in fact, some of those videos have gone viral, that it was taking years. It was taking years to get visas. Spousal abbi, it can be anything from 9 months to 2.5 years. It's something that I deal with in my office. Halaki, as a senator, I don't have anything to do with the visas. We mostly do legislation. And students, Pakistani students, the rejection rate, I thought was 76, but they admitted to 72%. And that's under the current liberal government.
Correct.
And I think जो हमारी community में ये realization आ रहे हैं कि they were fed certain ideas, or they were fed, I don't want to use strong words, that they were told certain things which did not happen. And I'm happy to say that the community now, the very people who would support the liberals now will tell me, get rid of him, get rid of him. And I say, well, you voted for him. By him, they're meaning Trudeau. They're very upset. And I think mostly it's because, things are tough right now, and people are feeling it in their pockets.
And आपको लगता है कि क्योंकि community का हमेशा एक gap रहा है conservative के साथ, do you think were you be able to bridge that gap in the last few years?
I think so. आप देखेंगे currently we have quite a few Pakistanis who are candidates.
Yes, we did.
So you're seeing that changes. I have always said that we need to have representation in every party. As a community. Because we need to have representation, at the table where decisions are made. So for me, to see so many people wanting to be candidates for the Conservative Party, I mean, right. it makes me very happy.
That's right. So currently, if we're talking some policies that we have been seeing over the time, कि rapid shift हुआ है, काफ़ी चीज़ें changes हुई हैं in the last 1 year. Economically हमने देखते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट ने डिफरेंट डिसीजंस लिए हैं जिससे काफ़ी ज़्यादा मुश्किलात आई हैं लोगों को. स्पेसिफिकली अगर मैं बात करता हूँ कि हमने देखा है कि एक पॉवर्टी का रेट बढ़ा है ओवरऑल, जॉब्स के इश्यूज काफ़ी क्रिएट हुए हैं. हाउ डू यू सी कि टू कॉम्बैट दैट कि एज अ कंजर्वेटिव पार्टी की जो नई पॉलिसीज़ हैं, हाउ डू यू सी कि दे कैन रिड्यूस दैट?
Well, that's the first thing that we have to tackle. You must have heard Pierre constantly talking about axe the taxes, people, certain taxes which have added to people's burden. And the Conservatives are known for their strong fiscal policies. And I remember the last time there was a recession throughout the world. Canada was okay. And I remember asking people, I remember talking within the party, and they were saying it's because we look at, the fiscal situation differently. We had a very strong finance minister, Jim, and we travel abroad and people would say, how are you doing things differently? Because in Europe was in recession, but in Canada we were okay. So it was because of the policies that the Conservatives Party have. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough when we win the election. It's not going to be easy because there's a huge mess that has to be cleared. And I'm not being political. I mean, when I'm in the grocery store, people don't know I'm a senator, and somebody will say, oh my God, the price of this has gone up, but my pay hasn't gone up. And many people are struggling. You saw 3.5 million people going to the food bank in Toronto. The numbers are staggering.
Or our crime rate has been increased so much.
Oh my.
So much that the freedom and the peace of night has gone away over the time. That's something that every Canadian has been facing. And the policies, I don't know how you're going to bring that change, because that needs to be gone as soon as possible.
It has to be. And my younger daughter put it very nicely the other day. She was saying, she said, you can control where you go. You say, okay, crime in this area is high, I will not go. But he says, but people are afraid within their own homes.
Correct.
Which is not right.
Correct.
Because we are hearing of home invasions constantly. Before you went to bed, you'd be worrying about locking your back door. Now, she saw me checking the back door the other day, and she said, Mama, why bother? They're coming through the front door now. and I thought, that's a very sorry state of affairs that Canadians are afraid in their own home. We have to, it's going to be very tough, but I know that...
वो भी फेज था ना जी कि कभी गाड़ियाँ भी लॉक नहीं की थी, चाबियाँ गाड़ी के
घर भी नहीं
लॉक नहीं करते थे, वो भी टाइम था. बट आई होप कि विद द चेंज with people are looking, whether it's going to be the same party or the different party, Canadian need change. Canadian want this security with coming with any party, and I hope if the conservative it is, then it's going to bring that change. लेंगे थोड़ी सी ब्रेक, और ब्रेक से पहले, क्योंकि जो पाकिस्तान में ना जी जो सेनेट के अंदर होते हैं, तो हमें लगता है कि सेनेट के अंदर सिर्फ जो है ना वो लेजिस्लेशन सिर्फ बिल ही साइन हो रहे होते हैं. तो कुछ जानेंगे आपके बारे में कि आपकी क्या क्या मसरूफियत होती है, और कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन आपसे लेंगे. आई नो यू आर इन द ह्यूमन राइट्स कमेटी, उसके बारे में कुछ जानेंगे. लेंगे छोटी सी ब्रेक. लेकिन सलमा बहन, होता ही है कि हमारे शो में ना हम ब्रेक लेने के लिए गेस्ट को कह देते हैं, और ये कैमरा सामने दे देते हैं, ठीक है, और कहते हैं छोटी सी ब्रेक है और आपने लेनी है.
We'll be back after a short break.
वेलकम बैक टू बी माई गेस्ट, और हम बात कर रहे हैं सलमा अताउल्लाहजान, सेनेटर. सलमा बहन, तो हम बात कर रहे थे कि पाकिस्तान में तो सेनेटर्स की हम जॉब को जानते हैं, देखते हैं, क्योंकि हमारे व्यूअर्स जो हैं वो सारे पाकिस्तान से हैं. दे वांट टू नो कि यू बीइंग अ चेयर ऑफ ह्यूमन व्हाट डू यू कॉल इट, ह्यूमन राइट्स कमेटी, एंड व्हाट अदर जॉब्स यू आर डूइंग एज अ सेनेटर.
So just to tell you, I'm on 4 committees currently.
ठीक है.
Human Rights Committee, I've been there since 2010 when I was first appointed.
अच्छा.
I was vice chair, but for the past many years now, I'm chair of the Human Rights Committee.
ठीक है.
Not currently because Parliament is prorogued. So when the Parliament gets prorogued, everything that's on the order paper falls off. Okay. All your titles cease, the committees are disbanded.
3 times government has changed in this time, no?
Yeah. Yes, but I've been on the Human Rights Committee, and in Human Rights Committee I've had a lot of studies जो मैंने sponsor किए, I've done. I used to be on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I was on banking. I was on finance. I was on agriculture. Currently, I'm on the Fisheries Committee. I'm on the Rules and Regulations of the Senate Committee, and I'm on the Art Committee because I am a artist also. So on the Art and Heritage Committee. But my passion always has been human rights.
So जब हम human rights की बात करते हैं, तो we're talking about so many disasters in the world going on, right? You'll probably be studying all those, right? तो जब decide किया Trudeau government ने कि they have to bring all these refugees from Syria to here, how difficult it was to have them settle, people with no English, people with maybe no education background, and they're coming to a new world from third world. Right, so how difficult it was?
So Canada agreed to take 30,000 Syrian refugees, and I thought we should look at the resettlement of the Syrian refugees, because we can learn lessons from जिन लोगों को settle कराया है कि what are the lessons to be learned, what has worked and what hasn't worked. So we started on that study, and we visited refugees in Montreal, in Ottawa, and in Toronto.
Sahi.
And then after every study that we do, first of all, it has to be in both languages, English and French, because Canada is a bilingual country. And then we do recommendations to the government. And the government has to respond to our recommendations. So we found that जो private sponsor किए थे refugees को, those had a very easy time settling in.
Correct.
Because लोग थे वहाँ, just to teach them, like you said, you're in a new country, you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, you don't know the ways. So if they had somebody who was there to, the women, and we take you to the English language classes, we take you to the doctors, take the kids to school, those people settled in very quickly. But the ones who the government had sponsored had a slightly harder time settling in. But the great desire of all these refugees was to give back to Canada.
Correct.
Okay, Canada has done this for us, we need to give back to them. So that was a very successful study for us, and our committee got a lot of coverage on the main channels, and it was very well received.
अच्छा, तो जब हम बात करते हैं refugees की, तो we have seen refugees coming from all over the world to Canada, right? And being a welfare state, right, we have some obligations to cope up with. We do a lot of donations and fundings to the countries who are in need, right? Do you think that also impact in our own way के जो हमारी अपनी Canadian की needs हैं वो हम पूरी नहीं कर रहे हैं, and we are just looking after all these refugees and all these disasters worldwide?
Well, Canada is known as the human rights country, right? And that's a reputation that we are all very proud of, that we step in, when help is needed. So it's important work that we are doing, because the one thing you have to remember, the refugee is a human person. And once you see these faces in front of you, and I remember jo Syrian refugees ke jo kisse humne sune, I couldn't sleep for many days. And I talked to one of the other senators, and I told her, I said, Senator so-and-so, I'm having a problem sleeping. And she said, me too. And after we talked to each other, we realized it was some of the testimony that we had heard from the women, what they had gone through. So we must never forget that these are people who, not because of anything that they have done, have been uprooted, and one should support them wherever we can. So I understand what you're saying. There's always that balance, but I think we're pretty good at keeping that balance. But because people overseas depend on us, whether it's for our expertise, or it's for physically helping or financially helping refugees.
लेकिन lately ये चीज़ feel तब हो रही है ना कि जब you are stepping into someone else's war and giving a balance to one country, right? That's what we have seen in Russia and Ukraine war. There's a lot of funds gone to Ukraine. I mean, of course, it's the government, and it's been passed through the Senate as well, right? And similarly, we have seen the wars going in Palestine and Israel. So how do you see that? कि जब इतना fund वहाँ पे जा रहा है, and we are in need, people here in need. अभी जैसा हमने कहा कि food bank में कितने लोगों ने वहाँ पे गए, and shelter homes are full. Right. So how do you see?
Well, that's a conversation that a lot of people do come to us and see. But there's certain international obligations like Ukraine that it's the decision that the government, the Prime Minister, they have taken, right? So
so Senate को उसमें क्या होता है? I mean, because you just have to sign those bills because.
Well, there's debate. So what happens is that legislation comes to the Senate and it's debated. Currently, we're only 12 senators from the Conservatives. The other, there's 105 senators for all of Canada.
Okay.
Sare aur jo hain, they're all, most of them have been appointed by the current Prime Minister. So, and also the government bills generally, they get passed. There's debate. Sometimes we suggest amendments. We take them to committees. We do amendments in the committees. We will do amendments on the floor. But whoever has the majority, they wins, right? That's how democracy works, right?
So how did it work? I mean, you were telling me about something that you have done in the G7 countries as well. Can you?
Well, what I was talking about is that I found out in 2022, I think it was, that the most Muslims killed in a G7 country was Canada.
Sahi.
So I was shocked, because that's not the perception that we have of Canada. And I wanted to know what was driving this hate. Is nafrat ke piche kya tha? Islamophobia. But what made people so afraid of Islam? And I, spoke to my senators. So in the Human Rights Committee, we always work through consensus. And I said, listen, I think we need to study Islamophobia. And we did a year-long study on Islamophobia. We went to Vancouver, we went to Alberta, we went to Quebec, the mosque where there was a terrorist attack, and worshippers were killed, and many others were injured. And then we came to, Toronto and Mississauga. We did 3 days of hearings here. In total, we had 138 witnesses, Muslims and non-Muslims also. But we spoke to more people than that. Har dafa every town that we went to, we would go to a mosque. Hum masjid jate the. And wahan pe we would talk to, the people who were running the mosque, but we would also talk to jo worshippers aaye the, unke saath bhi baat karte the. The same here, we went to Islam, had meetings there, So we spoke to lots and lots of people. And we realized a lot of the fear is sometimes the press plays a very negative role. We all know that. That Islam, if somebody does something and they're Muslim, they're very quickly identified by their religion.
सही बात है.
But और लोगों के they will never tell you. And I remember as the older generation, we always say, oh my God, I hope this person's not Muslim who's done this crazy thing. He's a crazy person who's done a crazy thing. But the younger generation says, no, I'm not going to wear that. I have not done anything. So there's that difference that's coming. But for example, in Edmonton, I'll tell you, we all cried because there were these young women who were being beaten, spat on, and kicked, and had coffee thrown on them on a regular basis. Why? Because they were visibly Muslim. We found out that there's a gendered aspect to this. Women were targeted more, quite often in front of their children. So there was the intergenerational trauma that these children were carrying with them. We don't even know how that is going to manifest itself, in years to come. So, that fear is real. We're seeing it. I mean, when we released the study, we got a lot of negative feedback. And I remember one of the clerks, jo badi pareshan thi, she said, we released it in October, and by December, she said, we've had over 5,000 emails. So that tells you, but it was a study that needed to be done. Where Muslim, 5% of the population.
Yeah, but someone else stood for it.
No, but it's a lot, because 5% of Aboriginal population, which you have, would be 5%.
5%.
And we're 5% also.
They have big rights.
Yeah. And also, but the thing is that the Muslim population is growing. And throughout the world, I was shocked to read about how Muslim is the fastest growing, Islam is the fastest growing religion in Japan.
It is. Even in Europe.
Even in Europe.
Yeah. Even in London alone itself, if you see in 2024, most of the people who take Shahada or they converted is in London actually.
Well, in Nunavut, in Iqaluit, it's a city of 7,500 people.
Wow.
Twice my daughter, who works there, has said, a young person walked into the mosque and said, I want to take the Shahada. And they were surprised and said, but do you know anything about the religion? And they said, oh yes, we've studied it. So sometimes when people are looking and it's in the news, so it does have a negative effect, but some people, they take the time to explore. And quite often, I'm sure it's happened to you, you're in the mosque and you hear, because there's someone who wants to convert. So it's quite common.
But over the time, हमें ऐसे feel होता है कि being a Canadian and living in Canada, there is some pockets where you feel racism, but in all over generally in Canada, the racism is not there. That's what I feel like. But I'm talking on behalf of a lot of people that I talk and I work with. But yes, there are pockets.
I would disagree with you there, Ahmed. It's just because of what we have heard. And I'll tell you a story. We went to a secondary school here in Mississauga, and they had gathered about 30 young Muslim students for us, and we said, okay, who's had incidents of Islamophobia? And they were all quiet, and there was this one young man, and he was very tall. So I said, you tell me. And he said, oh, no, I've never felt it. And then all we needed was one young girl to come and say, yes, it's happened to me. And it was as though the gates opened. And all those kids, even within the school, from some of the staff, they had faced it. So I always tell parents, have conversations with your children. And that young man, when he realized that he wasn't alone, this was happening to other people, he recited this poem that he had written, and we were all teary-eyed because of what he had faced and how he had put it down on paper and written this poem. So it's there. Sometimes it's microaggressions. It's done in a very subtle way. I remember I was asked by a young French man who said, oh, you're Muslim, why do you want to kill me? And I said,
seriously?
Seriously. And I said, why would I want to kill you? And we sat and had an earnest conversation, and he said, why aren't there more Muslims like you? I said, they are. Majority are like me. But you can't, nobody else is painted with the same brush the way the Muslims are painted with the same brush. So hair racism. And I'll tell you, when I started the Islamophobia study, some of my close friends who said, don't rock the boat, we're lucky to be here. So it's there, but sometimes you might not have faced it, but
of course, I mean,
it's there in a subtle way.
Of course, it's there. I mean, I'm not saying it's not there, but being generically as a Canadian, that I feel like, I mean, we walk, go, see a lot of people, meet a lot of people. We have seen out of 10, there's one story, but the 9 people, they find themselves home. You know, for them, Canada is the place.
It is. Canada's home, and I laugh. I say, it took the guards at the Senate 6 months to recognize that I was a senator, and quite often people, and that in itself is it's a microaggression.
It is micro.
And quite often me and there's another, my friend who's of Korean origin, and we'd go into events and they'd say, oh, what brings you here? And we'd say, well, we're senators. Oh, you are? And we'd both joke and say, we're not, old. I don't want to put labels on people, but a lot of the senators before used to be old men, right? But now it's changed. We're 50% women in the Senate of Canada.
Very nice.
But we have made great gains. Mashallah, students are doing very well. Jo hamare Musliman bache hai, they're exceeding. So we are Canada, believe me. This is the best country to live in. I would not live anywhere else. And I remember I have a brother in the States, and when my parents would visit, they'd say, oh, when we come to Canada, we feel like we're home. So I'm not in any way trying to put Canada down, but I'm just saying that there's issues and there's conversations that we're seeing in recent years, which you would have not had a few years ago.
That's
and
right.
I think it's part of the politics that's happening to the south of us, which I don't want to get into. But some of the conversations, some of the labels, some of the language being used has made its way here. And then, of course, also the internet and people sitting there and faceless.
But I think it was needed, and I think, alhamdulillah, thank you very much for standing up for this, and because it's all about the right of the people that you're talking about. Acha, एक last question before we end this conversation. पख्तून जो कम्युनिटी है ना जी, वो जानी जाती है दिलेरपन होने की वजह से, कि दिलेर हैं, खुल के बात करते हैं, right? And I've seen that, right? If we talk about those topics where a lot of other people that I've seen, they say don't touch base this, let's delete this and that, but we've talked about it. एक हमने छोटा सा पोल डाला था कि we have you coming, and if anyone have any question, so a lot of people ask me to ask her this question, and I'm just asking you on camera to see if you are comfortable answering that. पाकिस्तान में बहुत से politicians हैं, बहुत से leaders हैं. Who do you find the most diler leader?
You put me in a really difficult spot.
I did?
Yes.
You want to name it or no?
No. I have to think about this.
Yeah.
Who is a very outspoken politician right now?
I know few, but that's the question for you.
And if I say that, recently I heard, and I don't follow Pakistani politics too much to tell you, because Monday to Friday I'm sitting in Ottawa doing Canadian politics.
Correct.
But people will occasionally send you stuff, and I found, I think, a couple of speeches that Ahmed Goreja gave in the Senate, where he said certain things, and I thought, I messaged him, I said, be careful, I'm being very truthful. Who is standing up and speaking truth to power in Pakistan? I'd be happy to know some names if you could give them to me.
I can give you a list, but you have to pick one, if you like to.
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
I can give you from the top tier.
Yeah, tell me who's...
Let me just talk about Asif Zardari. I'll give you maybe Mariam Nawaz. I'll give you...
And these are the people you think are very
No,
brave.
I'm not thinking. I mean, this is what people have elected them, right? So, and if you talk about maybe Imran Khan, I'll talk about Nawaz Sharif, I'll talk about Sheikh Rashid. These are few people. Or we can say skip.
I think let's skip.
Okay, we have the answer. We have the answer. Okay, thank you very much, Salma Ben. It's been an honor to have you on Be My Guest set, and I would want you to give a very small message on this camera.
To my community, मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ ये मैसेज मैं उर्दू में, हालांकि मेरी उर्दू इतनी अच्छी नहीं है, कि मेरी community जो है मेरी ताकत है, they're my strength, and I stand on your shoulders, and I represent you, and I'm very aware of that I'm standing there doing what I do. If I take a misstep, it's as though all of you have taken a misstep. So I'm very aware of my responsibility, but please, come out and vote, get involved politically. I'm not saying politics is for everyone, but get involved, exercise that right to vote. कि फिर लोग मुझे ये ना कहे कि आपकी कम्युनिटी तो नहीं आती वोट के लिए.
ठीक है. So nice of you. Thank you very much. बजन skip करें change. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much, Salma, for being a part of Be My Guest. Once again, it was an honor. देखते रहिए Be My Guest only on ARY News every Sunday 8:05 p.m.